Greetings everyone. In the last video I was playing around with the concept of creating mascots, although this is just pretend, for Kellogg's Corn Pops, because as of now there isn't one. So I came up with three options. The first would be some sort of interdimensional, extraterrestrial sort of spokesperson. The other option would be pop stars, and the third option would be a child of days gone by. So let's say a kid from the 50s or 60s or something like that. Anyway, I was going to choose one of the three, but I decided that I'm going to do each one just for fun. And I'm going to treat them kind of like a brain dump, if that will make sense, but hopefully it'll make sense by the time I'm through with it. So kind of like a sketchbook exercise of sorts. I'm just going to set this aside for a moment. So the way that I'm going to be doing this, I'm going to, of course, bring out the bunny pen, and I'm going to treat this sort of like, well, I guess you could call it science fiction. So it would be like part truth, part fantasy, so part nonfiction and fiction. Fiction being true, of course. Nonfiction being fantasy. Anyway, so I have this other little sketchbook here. And here's where I'm going to start off, and then I'm going to start off in the world of some truth, I suppose. And as I said, this is just going to be a brain dump, and I'm just going to write a bunch of things down. So in the 1930s, we started to see technological advancements, and I'm going to look at three main areas of those advancements. I'm going to zoom in on this a little bit. The first one that I'm going to look at is electron microscope. So, electron microscope. So that would be in around the beginning of the 1930s. And the way this kind of came about, I guess you could say, would be two German scientists had developed this. There's two main versions of an electron microscope. They are known as a TEM and a SEM. Now, of course, the EM in each one of these stands for electron microscope. But with this one, this would be transmission. And this one here would be scanning. Now, with scanning electron microscopes, their magnification, they can do about 500,000 times for the magnification, so that's pretty good. With the TEM electron microscope, or the transmission electron microscope, it can do about 50 million times. So with the scanning one, it actually looks at the surface of things, whereas this one can see density, if that makes any sense. Anyway, like I said, we're just going to dump out my brain. This is important for what I'm going to be thinking of how we're going to see things. The next sort of advancement in the science fiction sort of part would be the ability to see or open up a portal into another dimension. So we'll call that intra-dimension. Now, at this point in time, they wouldn't be able to do lots with that in the 1930s. It would be a very small portal, and which is why they would need something like an electron microscope to see into it. So we'll call this advancement number 1. This is advancement number 2. And the third advancement is nutrition. We'll see how this is important soon enough. So, let's say that scientists, as well as government officials and military personnel, they love acronyms. This is important to make note of because at some point, the scientists, using the means by which to look into another dimension, they actually discover a micro solar system. This is all kind of ridiculous, I know. And they use the electron microscope so that they can actually look down onto each one of the planets in that solar microsystem, or the solar micro solar system. So something that they notice is that particular one has a sun and a series of planets, but instead of like 8 like ours, questionably 9, but anyway, 8 like ours, this one only has 5 planets. But much like ours, this particular lineup, only one of them is kind of in the Goldilocks location. And this seems to be the only one that's inhabited out of all the other planets in that microsolar system. So I guess in zooming in using the electron microscope, they're actually able to see a beacon of help of sorts, where somebody is looking for help. And the reason they need help is their version of the sun is actually dying. So they're going to lose their sun. And the scientists of our time in the 1930s, they know a little bit about nuclear energy, but they're nowhere near harnessing that power, either by fusion or by fission. So fusion is joining together. That would be like, let's say, the bunny pen here. Fusion would be, let's say, taking hydrogen and getting them to join together, kind of violently, I suppose, to make a heavier nuclei, which is the center of that atom. Anyway, to kind of make helium. And fission would be splitting something apart, so that would be like uranium and breaking it apart by throwing electrons at it. Anyway, in the 1930s, they're nowhere near able to create nuclear energy. What am I trying to get at here? Well, something else that they would have discovered too, let's say about this microsolar system, unlike our sun is actually a star, a yellow dwarf, I guess you could say, whereas here, it's almost like a little bit like a gas giant. Not quite, but a little bit like a gas giant, where it would be solid and its surface would be kind of on fire. Our sun has a lot of like nuclear explosions, I guess you could say. It's basically a giant plasma ball. So let's say the scientists decide to reach out to the third advancement. Now, here's another part of the science fiction world, and like I said about scientists liking acronyms, they reach out to the, oops, if you can see that, maybe this pen might be almost out. Oh, maybe. So they reach out to the, ooh, get a different one here. The Kellogg's Energy Works Laboratory, or laboratory. And it creates an acronym that looks like this: K.E.W.L, pronounced cool. And eventually they call that the K.E.W.L Institute. So the scientists who discover that microsolar system, they reach out to these folks because they figure the best way to get energy to this planet with a dying sun is by means of nutrition, because they can't find a way to split an atom and then downsize it so that there's enough power to... Anyway, so that's not going to work out for them. So the Kellogg's people, along with these scientists over the next 14 years, start to develop something else. And here's where things are going to get a little more wacky. And I kind of had to reverse engineer a couple of things. So the K.E.W.L Institute comes up with sort of a ball of energy, nutritious energy, that has like vitamin D, which is sometimes called the sunshine vitamin, and a lot of B vitamins as well. So that's what they come up with the Kellogg's Institute there. And in order to get this sort of right for the use for this planet, they come up with a containment of sorts. So this containment, it's kind of made up of two parts, and kind of look at this the same way as you might like, you know, the Death Star or the Pokemon ball. I'm going to use a different color here. So it would be two parts. So let's say the inner part, it's going to look like this. Be like a cup, basically. That has a lens on it. So this nutrition ball would be kind of like a battery, let's say. And these are parts of a projector. Now I should say the other bonus information, they're not able to replace the sun that's dying. What they've decided instead would be to create a moon for the planet. And the moon would act similar to our moon. There'd always be one side that would be always facing the planet. But since, you know, the planet rotates, they could have night and day. At least that's the way I'm sort of playing this out in my head. So it would be hinged, as I said. And this is called the nest. This is the projector lens. So this whole thing would end up being kind of like a flashlight that would shine light and heat on the surface of that planet. I'm going to say that this is the lens here of the projector. This entire thing is the nest. Now, the nest is actually another acronym, and it stands for, we'll call it the nutrition encased spherical transmitter. Anyway, so inside here, there would be a whole series of, come on, how about that now? It'd be like netting in here that would be used to siphon through an like enzyme. So it's like a enzyme webbing that would digest the nutrition in here to make kind of a fuel cell out of this. So this would all enclose around that. But to encase that entire furnace, and this is where we get that Pokeball kind of idea, there would be an even larger kind of like bowl that would go over the entire nest. Oops, you probably didn't get to see that. So it'd be like a two-sided bowl that would encapsulate this. Oh. Now, we'll get another acronym out of this for this artificial moon that's been created. This entire thing will be referred to as let me get there so you can see this. The planet. Oops. So it's a planetary orbital projector satellite. Also known as POPs. That seems kind of ridiculous, don't you think? But fun, the K.E.W.L Institute would refer to the entire thing as the POPs project. Or something like that, I don't know. But the entire thing. Now, I think it would be interesting, actually, if this were like a prize inside the box, where you get like a miniature of this specialized furnace that was used to save the civilization in some micro solar system. That would be interesting. And it could come with like a neat little stand. You know what, I don't know about calling it the POPs project because, you know, it has projector in its acronym. Maybe campaign? I don't know, I'll have to think about that. Anyway, so getting back to this, you could have like a clear plastic something that could sit here, or maybe like almost like a claw. I don't know. A quadrupod for it to sit in for display purposes. Weird, the kind of stuff that can float around inside your head, though. Yeah, we'll put on it. The K.E.W.L Institute. 1950. And then down here it would have, like, you know, whatever we can come up with. Because it doesn't really replace the sun, it just allows the energy source to be projected onto the planet rather than having to wait for the sun to do that. God. The POPs Initiative, which I don't have enough room. The POPs Initiative. Okay. Well, that's mainly it. And something that's interesting, of course, I'm going to back this out just a little bit. You've seen this. And of course, you can always get like, you know, the larger versions of it. So like this is like, this says family. This is like the little baby one. That's kind of funny. That's not bad, size-wise. Yeah. Last thing would be that creature there wouldn't have to look so alien. I think it might even be better if it being a humanoid could be just, it would look like a human. I think that'd be pretty fun. And you could say that these people were so happy to be saved by the K.E.W.L Institute that they named their civilization after them. They could have called themselves, let's say, the Kelloggians or something like that. And I think that'd be interesting. But you know how we see them would be by use of the electron microscope, and I think that's kind of neat. In my head, and this goes a little bit beyond all this kind of stuff. And again, brain dumping. When I think of the planet and the sun and all that kind of stuff, what I understand, I'm just going to open up my inkwell here and this pen just to get this out of my head. And this is why I've sort of settled on the concept of having a moon rather than replace the sun in this silly little scenario. When you think of the sun, for example, let's say this is the sun, and I'm going to zoom in on this. So let's say that's the sun, and you have all the planets, so our planets. So like you'd have like Mercury, Venus, Earth, which is here, Mars, Jupiter, which is like way, way, way bigger. And then you'd have like Saturn, Uranus here, Neptune, and you know, the way I grew up, Pluto, but we don't talk about Pluto. No, no, no. All of these things revolve around the sun. Even this little moon thing out here. If we zoom in on this just a little bit, so let's say this is the sun, and we have Mercury, and you have Venus, and you have Earth. Well, let's consider, of course, these are the orbits. The Earth moves around the sun counterclockwise. So it's going around that way. And how it rotates on its axis here, it rotates counterclockwise as well. Now, having its own moon or satellite, let's say that's the moon, although technically this would be about a quarter of the size of Earth. This thing goes around the Earth, you guessed it, counterclockwise. And if this thing could actually project light and heat, and it did it this, and so the interesting thing about the moon is that it has an axis as well, and it rotates counterclockwise. And the reason why we always see one side of the moon is because of how it rotates. I believe that's called like a synchronous rotation. Sometimes it's called like tidal locking. So yeah, in my mind, that's why I've chosen to have the new power source. So if the sun here is dying, but it won't disappear or like, go supernova or whatever, if it just becomes a burnt out mass, then it keeps the gravity or the attraction in that solar system. Although technically, I guess you couldn't say it's a solar system without a sun, but it has this giant, massive thing still in the center of it. But yeah, and of course, as I said, in this little scenario thing, there's a couple other planets. So there's 5 altogether. So yeah, no, that's the concept. Again, more part of the brain dump kind of concept. It's weird when you think about this kind of stuff, that it takes the Earth 365 of our days to go around the sun. That to me seems funny. And of course, the moon takes about 27 days to fully go around us. It's weird when you think about that kind of stuff. We have 12 months in the year. Although technically, I think it would work out better overall if there were 13 months. More just rambling, I suppose. Anyway, let's go back to that other page. So yeah, no, this is what we've come up with, and we would have a spokesperson. So that's the scenario that I have in my head, to just complete that sort of a mascot would be that somehow Kellogg's, with their nutritional dense battery inside of this nest, inside of this entire, I'm going to fix this here. Planetary orbital projector satellite, or moon, because we're going to say that this this planet that we rescued didn't have a moon, so giving it its own moon. Yeah, anyway, just a brain dump. This is where the light would come out of. But it could be more focused to not waste itself past the size of their version of Earth over on one side. So yeah, no, that is the concept. More so, I think that finishes off A on that. So I know that's a little bit weird compared to some of the stuff that I normally do, but it's just kind of weird to work out, and fun to work out an idea in my head like that. So anyway, that's it for now. I hope you have a wonderful day, and hopefully we'll see you again at some point in the near future. All right, ciao for now.